According to Google, dread is defined as anticipate with great apprehension or fear. Frostpunk is a game that puts you in the position of becoming a paranoid authoritarian. These two things go hand in hand, especially in your first playthrough where you have no idea what is going to happen, so you start making questionable decisions, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Even before buying the game, I knew one word would sum up my experience with it, and coincidentally, I knew what the title of this video would be right away. And were these expectations subverted? No, I was right. Although I was a little surprised when I first opened the game and I was immediately bombarded by advertisements for the sequel, even though I haven't even started the first one yet. Ah, good old capitalism, the most dreadful thing of all. Anyway, time to ignore that until further notice. By the way, it's worth mentioning I got a little too deep into my headspace while writing this, as the cold winter winds and my annoyingly loud keyboard and PC were the only things to break the silence as I went insane playing this game. So feel free to disagree with me in the comments, and give your thoughts while also boosting the algorithm, and since you care enough to comment, why don't you also subscribe? Anyway, you're welcome for me getting the shilling out of the way early so you don't have to dread me doing that for the rest of the video. The game starts with a nice cutscene of the world going to shit, which will set the tone for the rest of the game, and also the theme of persevering no matter the cost. And just the sheer indomitable will of humanity to some very cool music and visuals, so I really liked this cutscene. Anyway, immediately upon starting the game for real, I messed up and didn't realize roads could go between buildings, so I left a space open for them and immediately left the central hub unoptimized. This was the first of many tiny mistakes I made that probably contribute to suboptimal outcomes in these sub-zero conditions. Speaking of suboptimalities, in this game you must pass laws to survive, such as, do we make soup to stretch out food? Or do we put in wood chips to make more food? Some of these choices are hard, some are not. Choose soup. Also, some choices are traps which force you to follow through with your choices under a time limit, or else there will be consequences for not following through on your promises. Because when everyone's life is on the line, politicians have to be held accountable. For once, approval ratings matter. For example, if you choose to be kind and give the old and crippled a care home, you have to use your scarce resources to build that care home, or else you will have to worry about a prosthetic leg going through your skull. Unless you don't give them prosthetics, in which case you're fine. Also, child labor is more trouble than it's worth. I know it's funny to send children into the coal mines for real-life Minecraft, but they'll just get sick and my healthcare system is already incapable of treating everyone. Instead, they could just go to school or work in the soup kitchen to repent for their crimes. You can send expeditions into the cold wastes and discover cool things like a robot that could do everything you need in a workplace without requiring heat. And we also discovered the ruins of another city that started in the same conditions as us. Okay, so now everyone wants to go back to London, which is odd because it is a cold, dilapidated hellscape where every day is a struggle for survival, and that was before the apocalypse. So I was handed an ultimatum to make things better so my people will choose to stay. Well, there's a way to absolutely make sure they stay. The following footage was confiscated and then lost by the Ministry of Truth. After we ran out of coal for a minute, hope was decimated, but we persevered even though a great cold claimed the lives of a third of the population. Which just so happened to all be Londoners and amputees. Which is terrible, yes, but as I was already on the path of becoming a horrible dictator, all it really meant to me was that my resources weren't as thinly stretched. And a lot of the discontent people just so happened to die out. But hope promptly returned when I told it to, as the propaganda center was built. Hopefully I don't learn the wrong lesson from hundreds dying, but it's time to ignore that until further notice. Also, a small tangent, I found a few camps and then a city of Tesla workers who had a horrible boss and terrible working conditions and died out as a result. And I just thought that was funny. Like, why did they expect this to work out? Teslas don't work outside of Southern California weather. Never mind an ice age. But it wouldn't be the first time a car company in the UK made such unreliable cars. But this story has a happy ending as their leader gets killed trying to flee his rightfully pissed workers who suffered because of his actions. Which taught me a valuable lesson. I need more guard towers. I also decided to make murder legal. Inevitably, the Londoners' deadline arrived, and they were not totally happy, but I convinced them to stay. After a large chunk of the population suddenly died out, we had a labour shortage, so we sent our scouts to find people. And then refugees arrived. A lot of refugees. And now we have a food crisis, and I turned the sick ones away because we don't have the capacity to care for any more sick people. And then I've realised I now viewed them as burdens to society. I have gone from someone who believes in universal healthcare to genociding the sick and poor, so basically the Canadian government. As it turns out, the refugees were coming because Apocalypse 2.0 was coming for us, so the game tells us to stockpile everything and research all this tech to keep people warm. At this point I should mention the biggest mistake I made. I only had one workshop to research tech because I need the engineers on hand just in case we need them urgently, like for medical posts. And so we didn't have anywhere near enough technology, but we would persevere regardless. Oh shit, more immigrants. Our system is already overburdened, which again, I'm a pretty compassionate person, but even I have now gone from open borders and healthcare as a human right to outright fear as more people have arrived, and I'm worried the vibrations of their footsteps will topple one of these dozen spinning plates I'm managing. That if one of these spinning plates stops or falls, everyone dies. This game makes a great case for authoritarianism, if we were in such an extreme scenario. Thankfully, in real life, most of these extreme measures are completely unnecessary and cruel, and only in these circumstances would I ever consider turning free labor away, as I've started calling people. But the more the merrier, and dear God, we need some merriment around here. People are scared and unruly, demanding for anything to improve. Just for something to help them persevere. But unfortunately, we do not have the luxury of hope. While this game makes authoritarianism a necessity, it also is a critique of it, as it is an ideology based on fear, and making decisions based on my short-term paranoia and fear led to the worst decisions of the playthrough. I rejected the sick refugees because I thought it would be too much to handle. I didn't establish more than one workshop for research because I didn't want to take engineers away from medical facilities, even though there was a tech I could have gotten which reduces the number of engineers required for infirmaries. And I fell into the fear of fascism. It is important to remember these systems should only be temporary. Every compromise in morality should be reversed as soon as possible, as working for the better future is the goal of humanity as a whole. Just sustaining what you have leads to losing it. Every time I let my fear of running out of coal dominate, I didn't plan properly and almost had everyone die of starvation as a result. I shouldn't have hoarded my resources fearing for the worst and should have researched new techs more ferociously. I never even used any steam-powered stuff or built a factory. Got a steam achievement though. My short-term planning, fueled by fear, led to the deaths of hundreds because I was too afraid to take so many minor risks thinking they would destroy everything, often over-exaggerating the consequences in my own head. Letting people die was the easy alternative to me and I kinda took it. I thought I was doomed to die with the Londoners, this unseen enemy from within, and I was considering starting over because I failed to fulfill a heating mandate because I just barely ran out of coal hours before I could fulfill it. And people were very unhappy. But the thing is, I clawed my way back. There always is a way to claw your way back into the game. The fear is irrational and makes you do horrible things with even worse decisions, and the game knows it. It calls you out on it. When the deadline for the Londoners leaving arrived, I didn't do a good enough job for them to choose to stay, so I had to make them stay and several people died as a result. And this felt like a sacrifice I had to be willing to make when there was a better way and that didn't involve as much bloodshed. The whole losing your humanity with survival as a justification is bullshit. You destroy your humanity because it's the easy way out. In the midst of the blizzard, I felt my worst instincts fearing a mass uprising, so I established a new order killing hope to form obedience, and killed someone just to make an example of them. Ah, the man behind all of our problems. He is the one who ate all the food. How do you think he got the protein for those gains? Well, without further ado, kill him. Who is this guy? Did we just pick him off the street? I mean, suffer demon for your transgressions against my society. Quick aside, but the music does a wonderful job of establishing pure dread as your coal goes into the double and then single digits. As the storm blows, breaking down the bonds between steel beams and families, you get a sense of helplessness as the music dwells on the impossible odds. Yet, it has a strange sense of hopefulness to it. Like, we will get through this no matter what, because we are made from sturdier stuff than what some storm could destroy. And this oppressive music inspires dread and just a little bit of hope for you as you cling on to life. And this works in tandem with how they designed DUI to maximize the intimidation factor of nature. The current temperature is front and center to let you know just how hopeless the situation is. The calendar shows when the temperature will drop even further, letting you know how fucked your future is. Every drop in temperature is followed by crackling ice as the screen freezes over slightly, like the very fourth wall separating you from the game is also getting frozen over. But this also goes the other way. With every increase in temperature, you hear the ice melt as steam rises, fogging up the screen with relief washing over you. And the calendar isn't all doom and gloom, as it shows when things will get better, to give you hope for a better future to work towards and cling on to life just a little bit longer. But, of course, not everything can last, as the Great Storm is inevitable, and you are forced to watch oblivion approach you. This game weaponizes your fear against you, You justify horrible actions in the name of survival and cross the line for the supposed greater good, as the storm destroys your home and your people can only watch as 300 becomes 200, then 100, until either everything is gone or you persevere right to the end. You survive because the most powerful thing in this world, that is even colder than the icy winds around you, is spite. You live in spite of the cruel world. You live in spite of your people's despair and disobedience, and you live in spite of the dread that sets deeper into your bones than the cold ever could. Fear is a natural and sometimes useful response, but dread is an illusion to make it all seem worse and turn a justification into an excuse. To make easy decisions you want to make but shouldn't, or have no right to do so. It is a parasite of an emotion that only holds humanity back when you try to plan for the future. Its only purpose is to drain your mental faculties and make life harder. By the way, it's worth mentioning I'm not a psychologist or anything. I'm just a guy who played a video game and got overly philosophical as the anxiety set in when everything went wrong. By the way, why couldn't I do cannibalism? That extra food would have been very useful when everyone was dying of starvation. Was that down the organ transplant route? Did I miss out on cannibalism because I decided to properly bury bodies? However, there is always a better way. On my second playthrough, I became a cold and calculating yet warm and compassionate leader, and as a result, my people prospered. Once the shock factor was removed and I no longer had fear cloud in my judgment, I was able to rule with a clear vision despite the blizzard blowing in my face and led my people to a brighter future. With free healthcare for every refugee. Humanity restored. 30 brave volunteers died in the coal mine so we may live. I didn't even have to do much in the way of authoritarianism. Just guards to stop thieves who I reprimanded when it was right to do so, and also a propaganda center which can become a nice newspaper afterwards. So, in conclusion, dread is cringe and compassion is based. I can now lead humanity through the apocalypse. Under my new global regime, everyone gets a free copy of the best game ever made, Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story. Do not resist. Subscribe and you will be saved.